William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbec's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbec's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
Okay, welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 219th meeting since we started. We started in February of 2009. We've been meeting ever since. Actually, this started in Chicago in 1951 for the purpose of solving all the world's problems. They're still working at it. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue, express a point of view. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter. We only listen one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. And then we have questions and answers, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in the audience gets 5 minutes at the podium that wants to respond to what the speaker said, for or against. And then the speaker gets to comment and close the meeting. That's the standard procedure. But before we start, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements. If anybody has one, just, anybody have any announcements they want to make?
Is anybody not on the email list, notice the meetings? If you're not on the list, well,
who's still
not getting it?
Well, I need to get your email address. Put it on something.
Write it on something and
yeah.
Try again.
All right. Any announcements? Announcements? Anybody? I can't believe it. There's no announcements. Usually we have announcements. Anyway, we'll get on with it. March 15th is our next meeting. That's Restoring Civility to Our Communities with Carol Dunham, an attorney for over 30 years, mediator, background in probate law, and Democratic candidate for Texas House District 107. It's on the itinerary there. I don't want to read all this. Put you to sleep. March 22nd, we have American Exceptionalism and Foreign Policy with Jim Davis, a College of Complexes regular. He's going to discuss that. That's on the itinerary also. You can read that. So anyway, tonight we have Jon Gentry. He's our speaker. He's going to talk about cycles of bondage and freedom in human consciousness. He's a filmmaker and College of Complexes regular. He's going to discuss how human perception has a binary character to it. This is not Mars or in Venus, right or left brain. This is not Julian Jaynes' bicameral mind. It is something altogether different and yet unexplained. The perceptual diversity is best expressed in symbol form as some easily understood symbols. To others, this is a riddle. In this riddle, this key or secret knowledge of it, which explains a major part of how otherwise sensible people are manipulated, Jon will cover this and ask, can you afford not to attend? Well, anyway, without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Jon Gentry.
Thank you. Greetings. I should say greetings, Earthlings. There we go. Let's make sure we're up on the screen. Are we on the screen now? Did we get the... Let's see. Are we good? Joe introduced me to someone recently who just really blew me away, and that was a gentleman by the name of Mark Passio. And we're going to need to do something about the feedback. I'm thinking it's that mic down there. Is the handheld on? Okay, let's move that to someplace reasonable, and that might solve the problem. Or turn it off right now. Yeah. I thought I knew staff and circle. I thought I had a real handle on this subject matter, and Passio just blew past like, I don't know, Saul on the road to Damascus. I mean, it was just amazing. And I don't agree with him on everything, and that might be understandable because we come from much different backgrounds. When I was in high school, the first lecture I gave I don't even remember what class it was, but I gave, I think, a 10-15 minute lecture on cosmic consciousness, Richard Maurice Bucky, MD. And his conclusion was that there's something exists outside of normal human perception, normal functioning, your everyday reductionist thing that our minds do to us. They, especially the left brain really cranks down. And if we had any example of left brain versus right brain, I'd say left brain is achieving focus, right brain is going peripheral. And different things happen in different areas. In the little squib at the beginning there, I mentioned Julian Jaynes. Is anyone here in the audience familiar with Julian Jaynes? Read any of his work? Brilliant man. I even agree with him once in a while. But he accepts so much of the garbage that is our science history that when you start incorporating all of that into the bigger equation, it's really hard to get anywhere. Didn't have time to pull that particular quote, but Jaynes was talking about the left brain versus the right brain. He talked about the discrete areas in the left brain that had to do with speech, and that no center of speech was in the right brain. And he was kind of joking around about that. You know, you could have brain damage and have large portions of the right hemisphere removed, and you could still be speaking. Now, the thing he was really missing in that is that it is the male brain that is so discrete in its functioning. The female brain is very capable of repatterning and adjusting. And all of our records on brain patterns, where things happen in the brain, are all really related to trauma injuries, mostly from military action and warfare, where men were on the battlefield and were injured. And the real data on how the female brain was able to repattern itself, I know that one therapy they use now for people with severe brain damage, men anyway, is, don't tell them down at the biker club, but they will actually administer estrogen or things that promote estrogen while their brain is healing, so that the repatterning can happen. So another thing that did not make it into the slides here was the reading I did. Actually, part of this is experience. Back in the 1980s, I had a very, very close friend who was a theoretical physicist from Moscow University, Vladimir Litovchenko. Litovchenko, one night from about 11 p.m. through to 5 a.m. the next morning, well, actually near sunrise, sun was coming up, it was summertime, he filled up 3 blackboards full of equations proving basically that there is a higher degree of organization observable than in other words, any conclusion of randomness can't be made, not scientifically. That means natural selection is out. That means, to some extent, survival of the fittest is out. And I mean, he did it all. Basically, you get to a point where the probability that things happened the way they happened over the last few million years, billion years, it gets to be as the probability is as the number on that is like larger than the grains of sand on the beaches of the earth. I don't know what to do about that. I'm doing best I can here. Bring the mics down. I can always lean in. There we go. Okay, well, I'll just try to use this mic here. Well, okay, what is my standing? Why, besides Litovchenko, why would I have anything to say here? Why would I be the one to deliver this message? After delivering the cosmic consciousness talk, I ran into a book by Paramahansa Yogananda called Autobiography of a Yogi. And it put to me the challenge, okay, cosmic consciousness exists. I'd said it in public. I'd been at the lectern saying I believed in it. Well, if I'm going to make good on that, that's a quest. And basically I left home at 16 and started hanging out at a yoga ashram and eventually traveled to India. My parents negotiated with me. I did finish high school. I actually did attend the last year from where I was living, not at home. And in chapter 45 of Yogananda's book, there was a lady mentioned, and she actually was still alive. Most everyone in Yogananda's book was not alive. He had done a tour of India with some Westerners back, I think, in 1935. Well, she was still around, and I ended up going to India to meet her, hang out with her. And another gentleman here from the Dallas area, the name on the book here is Ram Alexander. His actual name was Lee Alexander. That was the Alexander real estate family. If anybody remembers, they were doing well back in the 70s. I don't think they've done much since then, but he lives in Italy now, so I don't see him much. But this is a book that he wrote from the notes of an Austrian lady by the name of Blanca Schlum. Blanca Schlum traveled to India to follow Krishnamurti back in the late 30s. Things were getting kind of weird in Austria at that time. And Blanca was Jewish by descent, and she ended up staying. She met Jiddu Krishnamurti, just didn't really gel with him. But then she ran across this lady, Nirmala Devi, who went by the name Sri Anandamoy Ma, and she ended up becoming her disciple. When I made it over there at age 17. I got my passport and traveled to India solo and met up with an English professor I knew who was over there. Anyway, I met Blanca Schlum, who then had taken sannyas and was going by the name of Atmananda. And this is Atmananda's story from her notes of being an Austrian theosophist and going through her awakening through to then leading her life there in India. And she kind of shepherded some of us Westerners through the language barriers, food barriers, and so forth. In 1972, I was finally going to have a private where I was going to be able to go ask questions of Sri Ma, this phenomenal woman, who, by the way, I feel did exhibit the phenomenon of cosmic consciousness. That was part of the whole deal. I got bumped by Indira Gandhi. I arrived actually early for my appointment, and Indira Gandhi took my place. So I'm standing out there with Rajiv and some of the guards and so forth. And but then later on, in a small town, agricultural village by the name of Raipur, which is not the big city Raipur, wonderful, beautiful little agricultural village in mountain foothills. In a temple there, I got my private with Sri Ma from about 40 feet away. She stared at me and basically just sifted through. I mean, there was really something going on. And no words were spoken. Julian Jaynes was saying this right hemisphere really doesn't contain anything, and so much of his whole thesis has to do with speech being the thing, language being the thing that is the producer of consciousness. Let me tell you, intuition, the higher intuition, functions out of that right brain center. That was what I'd say. After 4.5 years in the yoga movement, I had to make a decision to make. I didn't like the Indian food. I ended up with several others joining a Benedictine monastery. And part of the reason why this is pertinent to this right here is I got to experience collectivism firsthand. You didn't own anything, you couldn't own anything, you worked all day, you didn't sleep all that much, you prayed some, and everybody else got credit. And it was supposed to be spiritual, and you know, you'd signed on for it, and I mean, you know, hey, anyway, I did that for 9 years, and things kind of went downhill. The thing about, you know, when 2 or more are gathered together in His name, it sounds really great, except in a collectivist situation, there's always administration. Someone always has the authority. There's always a structure, and it sucks. One of the things that went on there is, I guess someone, I believe, I mean this is conjecture, I really believe someone from the intelligence community got the idea, well, you've got these monks over there, they're not really all that busy. Why don't we put them to work on the Russians and their psychic programs? So we had people coming in like Benjamin Otis Bibb, who had a organization called 7 Sense Healing. And he was working closely with Joseph Weed. Joseph Weed was the top psychic, paranormal guy in the Rosicrucians. And so we were getting some of the top, you know, cream of the cream training. It went through Silva, it went to super hyper Silva. I mean, we were doing things that you don't believe are possible with the human mind. Somewhere in the mix is we graduated into a whole new phase and gained an association with the likes of Dion Fortune through an organization that she participated in, not the Golden Dawn, not some of those other more controversial ones. This was, well, something I still don't talk about. And here, that gives you kind of the key there. This was actually required reading for some of the work we were doing. This was on my required reading list. And so then, well, what's this all about? There's a book out, this is probably the book that caused the creation of the false memory syndrome organization. I'm not sure, but basically it was a young woman who, under hypnosis by her doctor, Lawrence Pastor, was coming forth with memories. And the memories were very disturbing. And I can tell you, what is going on in this country is very disturbing. Michelle remembers. I also had some remembrance after leaving the monastery. I had some things occur, and I had some memories show up, and we were in a used bookstore. My mother was with me, and she walked over to me with a book. She says, "Is this what you were talking about?" And I'm like, I don't think so. Then I started looking at it closer, and sure enough, I seem to have this guy's memories. So you figure that out. And actually his name was Hector St. John de Crevecoeur. That was his name he used here in America. Born in France, Michel Guillaume Saint Jean-Marie de Crevecoeur. I didn't say it. And you know, the thing of it is, I sometimes get hammered on these things because I may have my opinion, but then where's the proof?
There's 3,000 people have been documented by Ian Stevenson.
Ian Stevenson, yeah, there's some significant work on it, but you know, I try to ease back from the edge of that because I'm not going to make a claim. Someone else could make a claim to the same memories. Where do we have the mic, Jim? Where did the handheld mic go? Okay. It's not questioned, but he's adding something. You know, he missed. Are we? Is it on?
It's on? Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was just saying there's some facial recognition software that they took the people that had claimed they were such and such in a past life, and they found pictures of that person, and they were able to identify people using this software out of random. You know, they basically proved that they were the very similar facially to the person.
Well, that's what I would consider a very anomalous thing. There were some anomalous things between my memories and some of the facts of this man's life. If, for instance, if I go back a few slides, if you look who the guy's name is on here, his name is Burke. If you go forward and you just happen to read in Crevecoeur's life as reported by these folks, is there was a Father Burke. There were some other figures where names were similar. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's significant. It's an anomaly.
Well, you go into David Wilcox's latest book.
You need to look at David Wilcox's latest book. It's probably going to shock you what you read.
Yeah, I'm.
Synergy Key. If you're
I kind of have a aversion to David Wilcock. We can discuss later some of the points. Some people come out with very good material in some areas, and that's probably the best I would say. I became acquainted in my video work with a former head of the Los Angeles FBI, Mr. Ted Gunderson, and he gave me this book in trying to help me understand what is going on in this country and in our culture. And this is what he wrote here. It says, "To my good friend Jon Gentry, read this and weep," or read it and weep. "However, we shall overcome. With warm regards, Ted L. Gunderson, 3/5/97. I'm only bringing this up because, you know, no one else is going to pat me on the back for this stuff if I don't sing my own paeans here, I guess. This is a book I purchased for my father. And Charles Key, former Oklahoma representative, state representative, he was selling the book, and I asked Charles to write something for my dad here. And he wrote, "To Robert Joseph Gentry, I really appreciate your son, John. He has done a tremendous amount of work on the OKC bombing case and helping to bring out the truth. Charles Key." Then below he has this kind of standard thing he writes, "Buy the truth and do not sell it." Proverbs 23:23. Charles, I believe, is back in office now in the Oklahoma legislature, and he, I'm sure, was one of the people influencing them with their passing of the Anti-Agenda 21. So, very good, yes. Another person I had some contact with, actually, I've had contact with a number of different people coming out saying they were victims of our government. This lady claimed to be a victim from the MK Ultra program, if you all have heard of that. And this is from Bryce Taylor. And let's see if I can read this. "For John, God bless you in your efforts and work toward getting the word out on mind control. Keep up the good work. God bless you. Love, Bryce Taylor." Bryce Taylor's real name in the real world is Sue Ford. It's a very controversial and confusing issue when people's minds have been shattered, especially with sophisticated psychological technology. Many times false memories are implanted, and even when they are deprogramming, they may still have some false memories in with the real, and they're fairly easy to discredit for that reason. And it's kind of a sad case, but I've followed many of these people and tried to be supportive of them with my video work over the years. And Ted Gunderson was a key figure in setting up these interviews and lectures and some of the meetings that I was at. One in particular in 1997 was put on by attorney ad litem for the state of South Carolina for ritual trauma, child abuse, and mind control. South Carolina had such issues with ritual trauma and child abuse. They actually had their own attorney dealing with these issues and keeping track of them. And Sylvia put on a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was called the CT Expo on Ritual Trauma, Child Abuse, and Mind Control. It was held on the 22nd floor of a building. I had no idea what the CT Expo was. I'm in getting breakfast down on the first floor, and these SWAT teams start walking in full regalia, and I about swallowed my gum. CT Expo was Counterterrorism Expo. They had really good security for that meeting. The awakening, I guess, where I began to figure some things out, I guess I can give credit to Dick Revis for that. We have horrible things going on in this country. That's my world that I live in. Likely your world that many of you live in. Waco was just a bunch of nuts. But then when you start looking at it deeper, you find out we had government going way out of control. And I mean, I've got video footage of everybody from, you know, the last negotiator who was talking to the Davidians, to the grand jury foreman who did not convict the Davidians who went to jail for 40 years. Just incredible abuses that happened regarding Waco. And this man, Dick Revis, really woke me up because he was speaking in Dallas at a meeting for Citizens for Legal Reform that I was videotaping in 1995, shortly after the Oklahoma City bombing. And Dick Revis actually applauded Timothy McVeigh for the carnage he had caused in Oklahoma City, the children that he killed, the people who were horribly mangled and injured and bled out there in that building. He applauded that as a revolutionary move. And I began looking closer into what Marxism was, because I found out that Revis is a Marxist. I tried to get him on tape talking about it. He talked to me for about 3 or 4 hours talking about Marxism and never really pinned down anything. And I couldn't get him to go on tape. But see, this is the thing. He is in a room speaking to Citizens for Legal Reform, predominantly conservative. And these people are horrified. They're horrified about what happened in Oklahoma City, and purportedly this was done by the radical right. And of course, that's nothing of the case when you start looking at it closer. But Revis really kicked me off looking into some of these other matters, because how could someone be so unconcerned about humanity? M. Scott Peck, a lot of you people may have read Road Less Traveled, excellent book. People of the Lie, I think he's reaching a little bit. He's trying to quantify what's going on with evil people. I mean, Revis, as I say, just shocked the heck out of me. If I can read it, let's see. Unpleasant though it may be, the sense of personal sin is precisely that which keeps our sin from getting out of hand. He's talking about, I guess, normal people. So, you know, that guilt trip we got laid on us, he's saying maybe that's a good thing. Then he goes down here. A predominant characteristic, however, of the behavior of those I call evil is scapegoating. They sacrifice others to preserve their self-image of perfection. And here is an example. See, we really don't have media in this country. We have media that follows, that they follow the party line. I don't really care what party line it is. It could be Republicrats or Demorebs or whatever. I mean, it's just, you don't get the truth. There are things going on that are so horrible that it's disturbing to most people to even consider it. And you know, I can't sit around thinking about it all day. I'm in a good mood most of the time. You cannot look into the abyss all the time and not become the abyss. I mean, it's just.
This is that guy that was kidnapped and.
Yeah. Johnny Gosh, yeah. And that's his mom there, and I met his mom, and I have her taped at one meeting, and then I was going to go by and try to do an interview. Iowa, I think she's in New Des Moines, I believe that's where she is. Anyway, I got her to autograph a book. John, thank you for your support. It has been a pleasure meeting you, Noreen Gosh. So I don't know her well, but she, of course, was one of those people that Ted Gunderson was supporting, and Ted got me into all kinds of trouble. So, yeah, he passed on in July of 2011. I lost a great friend. And I also, before that he'd moved, but I always say about Ted, I lost my digs in Vegas. You know, whenever I was traveling through there, going through Vegas, I could always stop in and see Ted and so forth. Okay, we talk right brain, left brain, and one of the things that started to emerge is, I mean, I was out of things for 14 years. I mean, I come out of a cloister, seclusion, I'm like, hi, honey, and all these women are like giving me hate stares and everything. It's like, what did I do wrong? Oh, I was too forward. Oh, well, that was 1970. The guys were all, you know, jerks, and nobody cared. And then I'm watching all the men around me, and they're like, oh, I mean, you know, all men are assholes. And so I had a lot of catching up to do, and this is part of trying to understand the communication skills between men and women. Is many of the times she is talking about we. It's like he and she are driving down the highway, and she says, do you need to take a restroom break at the next exit? And he's like, no, honey. He drives right on by, and she's like, well, but I needed to, you didn't say you needed to stop. The implied was we. It's like he didn't have the courtesy to then ask her the question whether she needed to. So, you know, all these fine little nuances here, you figure out that men are jerks and women are, you know, they're much more mannerly. Which led on a search. This is really a seminal book. This is not as much about, it itself is not the research. It is reporting on all the different studies of male-female differences that went on in the 1970s that got ash-canned for political reasons, where there were big differences that were turning up. I think now we're past that enough. We can look back and we can say that you know, there are differences, and there's a whole range of differences, and so anyway, now we're getting to the point where I would like to do a little skit, and this is for the purpose of bringing out some ideas, and for that reason I have elicited, I hope, the support of some players here. John has volunteered, and what we need to do is we need to get people over to the mics. I will stay on one mic, and then we need the handheld to go to some of the other players. Okay, John, we need you to probably come over to one of these mics, and that needs to go to Michael and Stu and Pat. Can you all kind of crowd around that mic, because it's going to take a little bit of a little doing here. Let me spread this out this way and give you some room. Now I want you to imagine. This is an imagination This is an exercise of your imagination skills. We're going to try to get outside the box here for a bit. And you're in a darkened lodge. People are in robes. Some of the robes have hoods. And that's really where the conversation starts. John, just lead off when you want.
I am the Grand Master, so here we go. The guardians of the four quarters have reported in and confirmed the lodge is secured. Does any brother or sister of the order have greetings to share?
I bring greetings from the lodge of Isis.
Belated greetings! That would be 2 decades your lodge was closed.
Yes, our Grand Master has gone to join the Just Made Perfect.
So I have heard, and yet you speak with confidence of matters we can but presume.
And well, I could have joined her, but duty binds me here to remain.
What is this duty of which you speak?
It is a duty laid upon my heart to impart a teaching for the benefit of posterity and the benefit of all here assembled.
Your confidence extends to boldness, if not to pridefulness. You would teach the esteemed brethren here assembled?
This is what has been laid upon my heart to do, yes.
Brethren, it is our custom to hear those who come to us from afar. Our courtesy does not extend to unquestioned acceptance. Weigh carefully this brother's words. Be they wisdom or be they folly. That is the determination we seek here tonight. Brother, you may proceed. Make good use of the time we grant.
Initiates of the Lodge, if there is merit in this life's journey, it is undoubtedly contained in the perspective gained as a result of being out of cultural contact for 14 years. When the real world was rejected by this initiate for the spiritual quest, America was going to the stars. The Apollo program was in full swing. There existed no challenge too large or problem too complex that a combination of willpower, American ingenuity, and technology could not solve. What was discovered upon returning, the strong will had turned into an effete passivity. The ingenuity had turned into involuted narcissism. The technology had gone on the back burner. The vast frontier had been replaced by a narrow-focused, myopic faith upon one's investment savvy, a setup for a fall. The entire value system of the country had changed in a fundamental way. Who changed it? How does one quantify that change? The desire for these answers burned within me. But the most amazing thing of all was the lack of awareness of the changes. Sincere queries were greeted at best with denial, but most commonly by a change of subject. The focus of my inquiry was invisible to other observers. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man proved to be invisible.
Brother, we are extending courtesy to hear you. Yet your liberal application of blindness appears to cover your host as well. I will seek to forgive you if you will be pleased to get to the point.
Very well. Let me recall to the initiates an exercise which many esoteric orders put before their neophytes. The consideration of a point within a circle. Abandoning the standard visualization, I put it to you that the point is the line facing you. This is not to change a wisdom teaching, especially one so hallowed as the Pythagorean mysteries. Simply put it aside for the moment's consideration. Hold in your mind that you are only working with 2 symbols all along, not 3. I am going to generalize further, skip a few irregular steps in the interest of time, and present you with these 2 symbols properly identified.
Am I missing the point here?
Behold the staff and the circle.
Yet I fail to see great importance.
The entire wisdom is contained within these 2 symbols. If you had nothing more, you could deduce everything.
Everything?
What are the most commonly seen outward symbols of Masonry? And someone would have to pick the one I'm not discussing. No, I'm speaking of the right angle square and the compass. Is this not so?
Yes.
The right angle square is to conform the perfect linearity of the line. The compass is to confirm the perfect roundness of the circle.
Didn't Dan Brown, the author, write something on this?
I wouldn't know. I haven't read his recent books. I spoke to him after he wrote Angels and Demons. Perhaps he used something from our conversation.
And I'm curious how that...
We were blogging on a website and he wanted to talk on the phone, so I typed him my number and we talked.
Really?
He had to pick up his daughter from school. He hung up and never called back.
Was that before Da Vinci Code?
Yes, before it was out. I'm sure he was working on it. It hadn't been released, though.
Okay, but this really doesn't clarify anything. So we have symbols that refer to other symbols?
Yes, we have much more. It is said, a symbol speaks 1,000 words.
And we have two symbols here, but I'm not hearing any speaking yet.
As I said, it's all contained within these two symbols, inherently.
I suppose we could meditate on this for a week, and I presume you will share with us what we would find out, right?
And it would most surely be time well spent.
But
you want me to deliver the cake now, complete with frosting and candles.
I would prevail upon you to show us that respect, yes.
In seeking to discern how America had changed in my long absence, I came upon something totally unexpected.
Yes?
Thought has gender.
Huh?
It begins with perception itself. There are two distinct filters through which mankind perceives. It extends from perception through thought process and on to how we act upon that information or stimulus.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right?
No, that work has merit in its own right, but is not what I'm disclosing now. This does not involve different lobes of the brain.
But is it similar?
Similar at first glance, perhaps. On closer examination, staff and circle is significantly different.
For instance?
There is no direct link to physical gender.
Okay.
There is no direct link to preference, sexual preference.
Please define further so all here can get a picture of what you're talking about.
Let's go back and examine the symbols again. What qualities can be associated with a straight line or staff?
It's got to be that you are saying the line is a phallic symbol, right?
That's one element, yes. Just don't miss the forest for that single tree.
A line could be a connection between two things.
No wrong answers here, but I would prefer we look at the other angles. A powerful connection, yes, as long as you grant the line or staff identity in its own right. If a connection is horizontal, what does a line represent vertical?
You mean like a pillar?
Yes, a pillar. But consider this also. What happens if a line bends?
Well, then, in theory, with a slight bend, a line that went on forever would bend back on itself at some point.
Good, excellent observation. We are making progress. And what would it be then?
A circle.
Yes, a circle. That's correct.
But I could put a 45 or 90-degree bend in the line, and it would never meet up.
And I could argue you had essentially created another line attached to your first line. Two lines at that point, but still lines. But if either line were bowed even slightly, it would create a circle. It might be a gigantic circle if it's a gentle bend, but it would form a circle.
And I don't think you can determine anything by this. I think this is simply nonsense. I could just as well declare the ends don't meet and you end up with a spiral.
True enough, as it goes. Follow that process further and you will find that a spiral has an inherent linearity of direction to it while it continually fails to complete a single circle. Let me ask you this. What is the carpenter's rule?
We are masons, not carpenters.
And yet we share common ground on this rule.
Do you mean the measure twice, cut once rule?
Yes, if you will recall, most depictions of the right-angled square show it as a ruler as well. This is a key to understanding the nature of the staff.
Brother Initiate, I thought we were going to get that cake with frosting. This seems like you're having the brethren mix the batter.
Simply demonstrating the process of inquiry on these symbols. That's how it goes. We don't have to go through all the steps. In fact, we could set aside inquiry into the staff altogether and just proceed with the circle.
I think you should flush this out a bit more before we move on. I don't see where you've tied this into gender of thought. And I certainly don't see how this relates to coming out of a coma.
As you wish. The staff represents the active mental. The term active mental best describes the functioning. The circle represents the passive mental. We're talking active and passive in a similar sense of plus and minus with a slight difference. We are meaning active versus at rest.
So you're talking yin and yang, really, the symbol of Tao or Tao.
No, the Tao symbol does more to hide the principles I intend to show you. You may think you're looking at a depiction of active and passive principle interaction, that something is being revealed. I am informing you it is being concealed from you in the Chinese yin and yang, the actual functioning.
Our doorkeeper has informed that we are nearing the end of our time together this evening. Our visiting brother from Isis Lodge, the former, oh, beg your pardon, our visiting brother from Isis Lodge, the former Isis Lodge, we will have to commence the unveiling again in a future concourse. I am sure you will all look forward to getting to the bottom of this. Brother, do you have any final short word?
My best wishes and hope to be here in a future session. I would offer this in the tradition of cliffhangers to whet your appetite. The staff is revealed in the minor arcana of Tarot in the suits of swords and wands. The circle is revealed in chalices and pentacles.
Thank you. Does any other brother or sister of the order have greetings to share?
I would like to thank Brother Initiate from Isis Lodge for sharing with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does any other brother or sister of the order have greetings to share? Very well. May the guardians of the four quarters assume their posts for the closing. The lodge is closed.
Thank you very much for the participants. Now, I have no idea what you gained out of that whole deal there, but I just figured it might be good to get in a different mode for a bit and break out of the regular box. Behold the staff and circle. There's a reason that they are drawn in that fashion, and I had some charts that didn't make it here. That's fine. But as far as graphical depiction, as I say, everything is contained in the symbols. And I want to emphasize how much I really mean this is not tied to gender. How many of you have ever listened to an Alex Jones program? Ever once? Very bombastic delivery. I mean, you know, if there's anyone who is a staff presenter, that's got to be Alex. Well, one of Alex's good friends is George Humphreys. George Humphreys is a totally different approach. And George Humphreys even produced some expose videos on 9/11 and so forth. And he's basically coming up with the analysis, well, what caused 9/11 was fear, and what we need is love. On some level, that might be true. That, practically speaking, that may not put anyone in jail, but you need to understand that these are actual mentalities that are out there. People function through those. One of my best friends over the years is a former 82nd Airborne paratrooper medic who has patched people up on about every continent there is, and he's one of the most circle people that I know. His approach and mine are totally different. We get along. This is kind of a breakout on some of the traits relating to the two perceptual models. The staff is very much an individual thing. The circle is almost a plurality, although it is individuality. As I say, in Deborah Tannen, most of her analysis, it's usually the presumption of collective that causes miscommunication between men and women. At least that's my take on it. And maybe someone knows better, but that's what I've gotten so far. As I say, active mental, passive mental. The staff is all about objective truth and measuring and assessing that objective truth. It's the staff, and see, here's where we get to the point. Okay, how does this really tie into thought? These are abstract symbols that really come out of the Pythagorean mystery school. When you think in a mode, when you're thinking in these shapes, the shapes have consequences in how your thinking functions. Is that anyone? I mean, are you getting that? Is that okay? Most people. Here's a good for instance. Is back in the days of the American Revolution, Benjamin Franklin was writing a little penny dreadful called Poor Richard's Almanac. And in Poor Richard's Almanac, he would have these aphorisms, these sayings, and one of the sayings was that the book about what men understand about women is a very small book. When you open the pages, they are blank. Now, see, that may sound, humorous, but the truth of it is, when you look at the two symbols of staff and circle, the staff is forever trying to take linear swipes at something which is a totally different shape. And if you can only think in logical, rational terms, and that is your skill set, you cannot encompass that, in fact, the circle is all about process. It's not about logic. It's not about rational step by step. And one of the main things to understand about the circle is, just like George Humphreys is compared to Alex Jones, is one of the major analytical skills of the circle is self versus not self. Now, I have a very high respect for intuition. Intuition has saved my life a number of times. So I'm really not knocking it, but it's a poor way to build on things. And for the reason is that intuition can be right 9 times out of 10. I've known some people who really had right on intuition. And sometimes they're drawing from all kinds of inputs that, the rational mind doesn't even quantify. But yet, if 9 times out of 10 it's right, that 1/10th time that intuition did not deliver the correct conclusion, there's no structure there. So then that wrong conclusion becomes a wall of belief, a barrier to then going forward with understanding. So there's some problems there. So one of the main ways also that the circle functions is through what I call labeling. And labeling goes right back to that very base identification of self versus not self. Is it the in crowd? I'm in with the in crowd. I know where the in crowd goes. Remember mamas and papas. And then, or you're on the out and outs. And the circle. The circle really is kind of a. Go back to that slide. Okay, in the circle is nurture. Outside the circle is outer darkness. You start getting into some really strange dynamics. When you're in a collective community, you find out, well, I never really thought that going to live a life of prayer, I would ever encounter fear about the human relations. But the thing of it is, one of the main manipulations there really was, well, maybe you just don't belong here. Well, but see, outside there's outer darkness. You're in here with the faithful, but outside is outer darkness. I mean, these are all circle games. People who seem to have a natural knack for this can be very manipulative. And so, okay, we're going, I'm missing probably about 30 slides because I didn't get the last couple hours of working on this, but one of the people who really maintained the principle of ahimsa in his bringing of his country into liberty from the British was Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi studied the founders, and Mahatma Gandhi was promoting the idea of Swaraj. Most of the articles, if I go out and I Google it, you find they're talking about Swaraj as far as India needs self-rule. But really, when Gandhi was speaking and writing, he was talking about real self-rule, which is rule of the self, internal government. The individual rules self but participates in community. That was Gandhi's principle. Gandhi actually requested that the Indian Congress dismantle once they got freedom from Britain. They were hoping to, Gandhi was hoping that it would go to a city-states. Of course, then you have the same dynamics that we were facing after the Articles of Confederation here in this country, where you don't have a strong face to put to the world, and you can't really, a lot of times, get any kind of accord between the various players. So there are problems there as well. But Gandhi's principle was governance issuing from the local, moving to the national. Even some of my most liberal friends really understand how important this is to act locally, to have distributed processing, to have authority at the local level, and yet all the authority is getting centralized. One of the things about the circle is I talked about how the right brain has this area where speech doesn't exist, but I really believe the higher intuition functions through there. But the problem is it really doesn't function through there for people on a regular basis. I may go talk to some Mahatma over in India, and she may correspond with my mind directly, and we may have a conversation mentally through that center, but it's like if I'm going and talking to someone else down at the bus station, they're not, you know, we have to use words. And this is one of the kind of the nakednesses of collectivism of the circle, is that it really doesn't have, it's really not all one accord. Is you have individuals participating, but everyone is looking to everyone else to know what they're all there for. And you know, it's like, okay, I'm in the in crowd. Well, what is the in crowd really doing? And so someone in all cases has to emerge that the collective recognizes as the voice of the collective. And you get a centralization of power. And cutting to the chase on that, the centralization of power, there are elite families who have figured out this dichotomy of human perception, and they know how to ride that. They know that the circle perceptual model, the passive mental, has that need for a spokesperson, and if they can manipulate it at that point, then they can stay in power behind the scenes just, you know, basically forever. And Mark Passio talks about a lot of this stuff too. Here I am, I'm agreeing like 90% or more with a former Satanist, and here I'm a former monk. And yet we both went through the gut-wrenching self-examination trying to figure out what was real after our experiences. And I think we're closer together than, you know, a lot of folks philosophically and so forth. And it's kind of surprising in a way, but I'm like, hey, yeah. And as I say, I owe Joe for turning me on to that. So he sent the link. And many hours. I think Hank has been... how many hours of Mark Passio have you logged back now? 20 or 30?
I already blocked him out.
You blocked him out. You moved on, okay. 18. He's fun. As I say, I don't agree with him on everything. Yeah. But he's got a lot of it analyzed. Again, he goes with some of the standard models of right brain, left brain, and, you know, good and bad and positive, negative. You actually have a quaternary thing going on there, because you have positive active mental activity and negative active mental activity, and you have negative passive mental activity and positive passive mental activity. The problem is things cycle, and it's just like the intuition that is right 9 times out of 10, but it's that 10th time when everything kind of gets set off on the wrong in the voice of the circle model, you start getting a centralization. You get a circle within a circle. And I had graphics on that, and they didn't make it here. Here's an interesting thing. You're thinking there's no significance to this. I'm telling you, this is so fundamentally significant, you have no idea how far it goes. In terms of legal matters, the active mental participates in what we call contract law, and the passive mental, or the circle I'm speaking about, ends up being trust law. Now, how are those different? Let's see, I have a chart that goes into it. Okay, here we go. In the contract situation, you have subject matter jurisdiction, 2 or more proper parties, agreement with disclosure, valuable consideration, used to be 21 silver dollars that were required. Passive mental, the circle, that represents a trust. You have trustees, administrators. Remember how I talked about, yeah. Empowered to decide and execute affairs of the beneficiaries, no disclosure of terms necessary. So the beneficiaries are really in the dark. They're being administered, they're being moved around. The one thing that, yeah. So the thing is, a good friend of mine, a legal researcher, Alfred Adask, who ran Citizens for Legal Reform for nearly 2 decades, I think it's at least 15 years. Al came upon a discovery that in all the UN treaties and most of the organizations like the EPA and these ones that are kind of founded, predicated upon UN treaties, they all seem to have this verbiage in there, this wording saying man and other animals. And it's very, very explicit that, you know, why would that be in all these documents? Well, someone is crossing their T's and dotting their I's, and they're figuring we can't let these people be in a contract relationship with us on this. We have to be the trustees. So active mental versus passive mental, it gets to be very, very significant. A Dallas resident approached her district's Dallas City Council member. This was like yesterday I was talking to her. She said, fluoride in the water is medicating without consent. No doctor or pharmacist can do that lawfully. Her district council member replied, oh, there's a lot of medicating that is done without consent all the time. Okay, well, what kind of law are we talking there? Are we talking, is this a public servant or is this a trustee talking to her? And how did we get to this state? We started off in a whole different manner. Here's where I say, okay, I give Al Adask, all UN treaties contain the verbiage man and other animals. Constitutional law is contract law, empowered individuals. All throughout the Constitution you hear the phrase consent of the governed, consent of the governed. We are being governed in a limited fashion by our consent. And that's our contract. I know Britain doesn't have one of those constitutions, John, but we actually got this all from the Brits, even going back to Henry I and the Agreement of 1100, I don't recall the name of that. But it even predated Magna Carta, where the rulers of that time were saying, hey, we're not going to be the bad guys. You know, we're going to allow you to live your lives and not be plundered all the time, just part of the time. So anyway, the difference here is the Constitution, which we owe a great gratitude to Great Britain and that whole heritage. That is for individuals. The UN treaties are really set up for beneficiaries. Beneficiaries being administered. I put individuals in quotes there. So what are we really seeking here? This is one of the slides. Mark Passio was talking. I don't recall whose program he was on, but they were bringing up what he refers to as the sacred masculine, the sacred feminine. And the sacred feminine is non-aggression and voluntary communication skills. Getting out there, making those wonderful matrix connections and getting everybody involved. The sacred masculine, the logic of using force for self-defense only. One of the things Passio goes into is he talks about the, what does he call it? It's below here. I lost that slide where I actually went in and I brought that up. But if you can look behind the writing, there's a phrase there. It's called the lost word. I never got that deep into Masonry. Passio is claiming that the lost word spoken of in the Masonic esoteric tradition is the word no. You need to know how to say no when people are violating your rights. You need to be able to stand up for yourself and for what is rightfully yours and not allow yourself to be collectivized. So I lost a bunch of slides here at the end. Let me see, that's about it. There we go, the lost word. That's my presentation for tonight, folks. I know people who met, I think I might have met him once. I'm not a great, yeah. Yeah. Oh, is this Q&A right now? I guess, oh, okay, Q&A, yeah.
Well, he
Drunville Melchizedek.
It has to do with the squaring the circle, which is also a Masonic.
The squaring of the circle, the square represents the body, and the circle represents the soul. As far as I can figure out, within Masonry, there is no actual squaring of the circle that ever occurs, other than just awakening people to the fact you are a soul. As far as Drunville Melchizedek, I think he has a very healthy ego. Very much so. Very much so, your comment. I don't know. The thing is I spent way too much time in the New Age movement, and that's an area where Mark Passio and I totally agree. He goes through and divests, I think, a lot of the major revered concepts of what has come to be the New Age here in America. See, my problem is I actually studied in the Far East. I was actually there, and there was never any nice, lovey, cuddly stuff. It was all discipline and focus and effort. And so, I mean, you know, if I'm meditating 6 hours a day, I'm actually doing things. I'm not zoning out. Over here, people, you know, it's like, oh, if you meditate, your life is just going to become so peaceful and all this. Really? Actually, you're going to be stirring things up, and you're going to have all holy hell war going on inside. And then you're going to have to get through that with God's help. So, anyway, any more questions? Hank has a question.
So, assuming this is correct, what can you do with it? What can we do with it?
Well, Passio has some very good clues, and I lost those quotes. He was quoting from James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and a number of the founders. I interviewed a 23-year CIA assassin. Ted Gunderson sent me out on that interview. The guy had been charged with treason for refusing a direct order of the president, which was an unlawful order. I asked him for solutions at the end of the interview I did. And I said, okay, you know, you've talked about all this corruption in government and all these horrible things going on, and you know, knocking off people internationally just because they, you know, smiled the wrong way at us or something. Really terrible stuff. And so, well, okay, what is the solution? What's the remedy? He said, with conviction, The only thing that we need is for the American people to simply stand up and just say no. So that's the first time I heard someone propose that as a solution. So I think we all ought to go through and begin inquiring, meditating on what's going on in our lives, where we can find the opportunity to just say no to things that really are creeping in on us.
So, John, if people are saying no, if that's the right answer, no creates a vacuum.
Not necessarily.
What do we do instead if we stop doing or stop accepting what they're doing to us?
Well, let me answer that in this way. If you say no to Monsanto, if you say no to genetically modified food and the outrageous monopoly and power Monsanto has both with tentacles inside our government and in our court system, if you just say no to that and we get rid of Monsanto, then what we end up with is we end up with good food. So that's not a vacuum, really. If you say just no to monopoly capitalism, which is almost in every area of our marketplace now, and say, I'm going to just say no, I'm going to go buy what I need down at my local flea mart where everybody's getting together, swap meets, and cover as much as I can locally and really transform the way I do things so that I am not participating in or dependent on all this cartel stuff, then that is a way of just saying no and coming up, and again, that's not a vacuum. So I guess that would be voting with your wallet is one way of saying no.
I'm going to restate my question, especially relating to the circle and the staff. That was the most focused part of your talk. I didn't understand the connection of your answer to that at all. Just say no. Nancy Reagan could say that without the staff and the circle. So maybe more something staff and circle.
Okay, well, you are correct. Many people approach the issues I'm bringing up as staff and circle. They see it in a different light, from a different perspective, but we're really still talking about the same things. We're still headed in the same direction. What I'm offering with the staff and circle analogy is just try meditating on it and figuring out how these symbols can teach you, because it is all connected. And collectivism is not where we really want to be. That's healthy. I can go through and I can look at such things as Eve in the garden with the serpent, and I can say, man, that's the initial, that's the kickoff there of collectivism, where Satan is offering Eve. He says, no, you won't die. No, you'll continue. You'll be as gods. But see, this is collective talking. No, Eve won't die. She'll be the mother of the generations to come. So she lives on through the collective. You go through every statement that's made there, and it's that other voice. But see, that voice is actually a third element. It's not even the circle. It's the voice of the collective, the voice of the circle, which never measures up. Because if the voice of the collective ever measured up, the voice would mentor to the collective. The individual members of the collective would work on their own individuation, and they would become healthy individuals. And one of the discoveries of this is, all this stuff we did, in the New Age movement, let's everybody hold hands, and, we're all going to be, it's all going to be good together, and we have these utopian goals and all this. And the thing you begin to understand when you look at it closely and analyze it, it is the staff that is really loving. The circle, and what holds the circle, the collective together, is fear. But in the romance phase, which the circle is very good about phases, it has process. And the staff really doesn't understand it. So, you know, if you don't understand these things, hey, I'm with you there. I mean, I've looked at this, I've analyzed this, and I still make mistakes. And I forget to analyze process and look at where things are in the scale of things, you know, from where it's gone and where it's going and so forth. I lost some slides off here because I did something stupid and didn't get the last couple hours of work. But see, one of the parts of circle process is, well, it's like you go back to someone like Rian Eisler. And Rian Eisler has written about how horrible the Nazis were and how horrible males are and the male dominator culture and so forth. And we just got to, you know, get rid of all males and it'll be this wonderful world. You know, we'll just... And there are several. Mary Daly, I loved her, you know, guilty pleasure reading Mary Daly. You know, some of the stuff she says about men, I'm like, gee, wow. I mean, it's wow. Very negative on men. And so, you know, but would the world really be better if there were no men? Well, let's take a step back here. The Nazis were National Socialists. Hitler was a socialist. This is not like right-wing extremist, you know, constitutional talk here. This is socialism. And you start examining how many people died in socialist regimes in the last century here and a little more. And it's just like up around 200 million. It is the history of genocide. So you don't really want your country to go socialist. It's not, I mean, sure, you know, there are areas of Europe, things are going fine over there. Well, that's good. That's not always how it goes. You know, I mean, Pol Pot got to a point where when he did his purge, anyone with glasses, they rounded him up. Anyone with glasses, because they might read. That's the extent of the purge. And the circle goes through phases, and it's like you can kind of chart. You know, there's the initial romance phase. It's kind of like a church community. Like, well, it's like, for instance, I've been kicked out of more churches than I've ever joined, and that that's my joke, but you know, it's true. It's literally true. It's you may not go through the whole joining process before they finally decide this one's not for us. You know, he can think. He's not going with the program. But see, the initial thing is, you know, it's like, well, get on the glory train, join in with our church community. Oh, it's so much better. We got this utopian, you know, we're all going to heaven together type thing, and just, and so then you know, they spend time with you, and they're interested in everything you say, and you have some very interesting philosophical conversations and deep religious stuff, and then you join, and they're like, okay, we're really not interested in you anymore. Just, you need to be doing more listening. You need to listen to our pastor, and you know, we're really not sure. If you can't listen any better than that, then we might just have to throw you out into that outer darkness out there, you know, which you really, you know, before when you were out there, it was fine, you know, but now you're in the elect community. Now they're going to toss you out of your ass, you know, so. You look at that, these are games that people play, and this is part of the circle process. And there are relatively benign circle things going on. And then there are situations where the brakes just really get taken off. And that might be another talk. But you know, when collective really gets its own way, it goes, at some point begins a war on the individual, because individuality is not allowed in collective. It does not conform. One of the things about the staff is everything about the staff is about consent and working together through agreements in a contract fashion. Over on the circle side, it's about compelled performance. Is you will do it this way because we all we have consensus that that's what you should do. So, you know, you do agree, don't you? Well, I mean,
straight talk and avoiding the point.
It avoids it. Okay, well, the thing, I had a producer. I was working on a very interesting video out in New Mexico and then Arizona, and Lance used to say this thing. He's like, well, we're all partnering on this, and so finally I called him on it. See, there were certain technical things on the production and so forth, and I said, Lance, why every time you talk about us partnering on this, why do we always do it your way? I mean, that doesn't sound very much like partnering to me. I mean, we're supposed to be working together on this. Well, working together was listening to the voice of the collective. Because Lance was a collectivist. It just happened to be that way. And I got my comeuppance on him. It was actually on a molecular way of producing gold as we were doing this video on that. And so I told Lance at the beginning, I said, Lance, there's some people that really might not be happy with this. You might get some blowback. And Lance looks at me and he says, that's just not in my paradigm. So anyway, I didn't even get back to Dallas. I dropped off 300 copies with them, and I've got about 30 copies with me, and I'm on my way to a meeting to talk about it and sell some copies, I hope. And I get a call on the phone from Victoria, Lance's other half, and don't sell the videos. I'm like, what happened? Somebody's threatening. They were threatening. They beat up one of our people. And I'm like, I thought that wasn't Lance's paradigm. I mean, there was absolute. I mean, I do not know what was said or what happened on the other, but it was like silent for about 30 seconds, and then we had a discussion after that. But that was my payback on that.
So I have a question.
Go for it.
John, this kind of ties back to Pat's question, where you're saying that the answer is just say no, don't control them. And from my perspective, the staff, the circle, the on, the off, I mean, look at the power button on your computer. If it's a circle, it's on,
I hadn't thought of that.
Switch, it's off. Okay, we use these binary symbols of the duality.
Correct.
All throughout our lives, right?
Yes.
But that is inherently limiting. And so I ask you, do you really feel like it's mutually exclusive, that you either get consent by everybody, or the socialism that you're talking about, or there's this consent by everybody you're saying is the staff mentality, whereas everybody in the circle is this other, get on board or not. I'm trying to understand where you're going with this. I think that we're limiting ourselves with only yes or no, black or white. There are other colors. There are other aspects.
Okay, let me respond to that. And that's a great comment, is there are other colors. See, that's a good circle analogy, because the circle is where most of the creative stuff is happening. And it's really kind of a sad thing. I go to some groups with kind of, you might say radical conservatives, and I mean, none of these people are like wanting to harm anybody. It's just, things are really boring. And then you tune in NPR or something, or you listen to, KERA here locally, and they've got all these interesting programs on and so forth like that. And so there are times when the staff is an appropriate implement to be using, perceptually and in action. There are actually times when the circle is appropriate, and understanding it is very important. I've done terminal care for 2 family members. One of them was my fiance. Understanding the circle really helped me, because I really helped. I mean, there's nothing that could be done in either case, and just understanding that and basically going to the grave with them, always keeping them in your circle, and knowing how to give the emotional and verbal messages to do that, because it's a normal human reaction to draw back and do the exclusionary number, where you're like, well, I'm not dying, it's like, that it's self versus not self. And I watch people do this when they're involved in care for the sick or terminal care or something like that, and it's just wrong, because you're cutting the person off. And all they really need is there's what you can do and there's what you can't do. What you can do is you can keep them in your heart circle. So basically, when you look at the two things, and this kind of goes to right brain, left brain as well, I don't believe in what Passio says about balance. I don't know when I kind of finally came to that conclusion, but I finally decided I didn't really want to be balanced. What I want is I want to have a good degree of polarity. I want to be firing on all cylinders in as many areas as I am personality-wise capable of being. I want to be as full a person as I can. And so that includes some partaking of both. And they can interact together. And because everything cycles, this is one of the things about the universe. You have waxing and waning and so forth. As I imagine the staff and the circle working together to create these wonderful Fibonacci spirals. And that's really what most we find in creation, is we find all these Fibonacci sequences and so forth. So, I'm getting down to a level of analysis. You may not want to go there, but just let it take hold and work as leavening and see what you come up with, because I know something's real there. Did I answer your question?
I guess I'd have to meditate on that, honestly,
Okay.
because, the answer is, if, like what Pat said, if you're saying no, then what fills that space? And I think just by the act of saying no, I do not give my consent, I think that that's more limiting than shoving someone outside the circle.
Well, that's an interesting...
That is kind of shoving someone outside the circle.
That's an interesting perspective. See, one of these symbols that naturally associates itself with the staff, and in fact it was used in some of the early symbology, and actually is on our dollar bill and so forth, is the fasci, the gathering of sticks or rods together, and they're bound together. Well, that's actually representing an understanding of how the staff works. But see, staff interaction, one of the essential things about the staff is this idea of being fully independent and complete as far as can be in oneself. And then if you join together with others who are also in that fashion, in that mode, then you do so by binding oath and contract, and that is what binds you together. And those are what those symbols of the fasci mean. Now, of course, now we think of fascist and we have all kinds of negatives, but it's not the first time that what I feel should be a positive symbol gets hijacked. Even the Nazi cross actually was a symbol stolen from India that just simply meant positive energy. And sometimes these things happen. When Scott Peck is talking about evil, he was talking about how devious and crafty evil is. That's why I think it's important to have tools like staff and circle. It's being able to do a level analysis on that level.
So what binds this series of staffs together but a circle around them?
And yes, and in a way, but it's a different kind of a binding, because in the collective, you have individuals seeking to work together, kind of become, I use the analogy of like a school of fish or something. They all want to jog the same way and move together. That's kind of the mood. Is collectivism means giving up a part of yourself to participate. Now, I may not be saying that, a social contract type thing. And see, the more you give up of yourself, as I've found in the religious community, the more it really doesn't work for the individual. And after a while, the individuality itself comes under attack. One of the issues I had in the monastery is I believed that the truth was a defense. And if If I knew something was true, I was sticking by it, and I just was not swaying with the politics, and I wasn't going with the the meme, and it's it doesn't work. It doesn't work well.
I think it's interesting that you said you reject balance because psychological balance is defined as being able to incorporate both sides. And to me, this sounds slightly oppositional, that or confused.
Okay.
If you would respond to that.
One of the wisdom teachers that I ran into over the years was a road lecturer for the Theosophical Society, a gentleman by the name of Bing Escudero. And Bing and I had some differences, but he came out with some real deep understanding on things. And at one point he said, without polarity, there is no energy. And so there's a type of balance which is a evening off of everything to achieve balance, or there is a balance that incorporates very strong polarities, which is energetic and creative. And I want that creative, polarized balance more than I want the stultifying balance of evenness. Neutralized.
There's a balance where everything is dead, and everything's perfectly balanced when everything is dead.
Stasis would probably be a better word than dead, because I don't know, but yes. Okay, well, I know it's recommended. I know that people are said, you need to achieve balance on this and that. Many times you're achieving balance with, here's one reason I'm not real happy about balance. One of my great mentors and friends was Dr. Edwin Mumaw, the dean of the UT Austin Business School, who after he retired started engaging in paranormal research, and I went in there as his cameraman on a lot of different jobs. And Dr. Mumaw, in his career with business and business consulting for people like South Lake Corporation and so forth, had what he called his frustility model. And the frustility model was to help employees deal with the frustrating situation of having real negative people as managers. I'm wording it my own way. Business was pretty authoritarian back in Ed's generation, and so the frustility model was really to keep the natives from being too restless, is knowing how to deal with your frustration at the futility of trying to change anything. And so that's just not my approach. It's kind of like my country right or wrong? No. If my country's wrong, I want to right it. So that's the kind of dynamism I'm talking about.
We're running out of time. I just want to, how many people want to respond to what the speaker has to say? Now's a chance to, I got to count anyway. I don't want to cut off the questions, but we're getting close there. Who wants to respond? Anybody? Come on up here.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker of the House, Mrs. President. Yes, my wife is very sexy. All right. Okay. I happen to have a privileged position here of having heard this before. I got stuck in the car with him when he was working this out. His presentation, it was all the way down to Waco. It was like 3 hours. And actually, I found a way to enjoy my captor. You find a way to make sense of this. So you find a use for it. And then something magical happened. On the way back, we picked up somebody else, a young man, so I got to hear it again. So I pretty much know what's going on here a little bit. Anyway, but sometimes you forget things, and so it's good to have reinforcement. So now I think I will remember when my wife tells me, do I have to pee, it means the sheet has to pee. So I'll remember that. But, I think according to our level of evolution mentally, and according to, how avid we are to learn new things, we will find a way to find something good in this. And you can't really, make other people understand the whole thing because you don't know what else they relate to. So there's education. So what are some trump cards? I think in any subject like this, logic is good, and people don't know what logic even is anymore, I think. But there are rules to work out because even in the history that's been given to us, we've seen how people have used force over logic. Sometimes it's been burning at the stake, or armies, or threatening, if you don't recant, I'm going to kill you. This was done to Galileo, for instance. It's a famous case, but it's just a representative case. But sometimes it's more subtle. Like in the scientific community now, the money is flowing towards certain projects. And I don't know, I think more relevant to us at our level here in this room, there is social pressure, peer pressure. And I think John's bringing voice to something that I noticed that logic goes out the window sometimes when we want to be in the new religion. The new religion, something you really believe in. Like, I don't believe in Jesus really the way that, my grandfather did. So we made a new religion. Well, we've been given some false paradigms in this new religion. So it's up to us to evolve. We have to learn to question everything. The highest form of patriotism is dissent. My country, right or wrong, is an interesting phrase. It's very brave and very powerful patriotic statement to stand up and say, wait a minute, 2 and 2 here is 5. No, that's what you said. Let's fix this formula. So this is a tool I found useful in trying to interpret, how me and my wife communicate mainly, really. That was an interesting, really interesting part of it all. But as far as extending it to politics, I can see where John is saying that the circle paradigm is very prevalent right now. And that's partly because the media has such power over us that it's making us a little bit too much that way. And of course, the yin and yang is relevant, and of course we need all that to have life and things to go on. But so it's just one more thing to be on guard on. I mean, right now Tea Party is being demonized, but one of the reasons they're demonized is because they are a circle of thoughtless people. It's certain, or at least that's the stereotype that is rightfully attacked. Well, it's the same with the liberals. On the internet, there's this polarization is what we got to watch out for. I got this thing somebody gave me. It was like, what did Obama do? It was like, I can't, I got it here. Somebody wrote this thing. Was it you? So it's like this big sheet of paper with large print. And it was like making fun of people who question Obama. Because somebody said, well, what did Obama do that's so great that he deserves to be worshipped and supersede normal constitutional restraints? And I looked at that list, and everything on there I didn't like. And most of it was like, well, he signed, it was mostly nothing. I was like, he signed some, so they filled up this whole page. Then on the back, I wrote down all things I didn't like. Basically what I'm saying is the Democrats and the Republicans, that to me is kind of funny game. But what they can be rightfully criticized by each other on is when they start losing their individual intelligence and logic. And I do see that. Anyway,
Just 2 games.
excuse me?
They're both 2 games, it's just been true. They're 2 organized
Republicats. Anyway, I'm sure I took 5 minutes. I can't hear what you're saying.
One of the things was you said no, and you said you said no all the time to your wife.
I didn't say that. He did. We all look alike. Listen to this. Just say no. Just say no. No, I don't know. Yeah, see, I don't know. I think that's an interesting, very, very poor choice of I don't know, paradigm. That just say no thing is kind of weak to me. But anyway, no, I didn't say that. I will say no, I did not say that. No, I think what he's saying is no when this circle thing is really debasing your humanity, and at that point have the courage to stand up for truth. Truth before authority, not the truth of authority, the authority of truth.
Amen.
Okay, who's next? There has to be a next. Are you next? No. Okay, come on up here, John.
I yield my time to him.
Well, I guess the other John spoke about left brain, right brain, male, female. When I meet young chaps and they have fiancés going to get married, I say, you must learn the 2 magic words. Yes, dear. But generally speaking, I find that listening to people, especially females, is very good. If you understand what they're saying, I think you. But fortunately for me, my wife is a hard-headed Finn, and they're never wrong. You see, that's what Finns are. They can never be wrong. So, provided I give a total solidarity, then I'm fine. You see. And I can do anything but solidarity is it. So that's 2 penneth on that. As you were speaking, I cast my mind back to a new. I had 4 English heroes who were alive when I was alive. One was, of course, George Orwell. You mentioned about the liberals and whatnot. Basically, his book Animal Farm says that the far right and the far left really are the same. They're both totalitarian, and so a liberal is not either left or right. I mean, a liberal is a thinking person. Okay. Anyway, fine. Anyway, so the other, a new hero, of course, to some people is Richard Dawkins. I went down to Austin to hear him speak. He wrote The Selfish Gene. Now, my view, looking at that, is biologically, you have this primitive brain, which is really where the selfish gene or self-preservation comes from. And I think I always, as you may know, I approach things from a socio-economic viewpoint. And I think the totalitarian mind, if you want, always operates on the selfish gene. They always think of yourself as an individual. In fact, I was going to write a book called Precisely Backwards, about every American myth. The reality is totally backwards to the reality. One of the myths is this rugged individualism, you see. Well, I've never seen too many rugged individuals, There may have been a few killing Indians and whatnot, but, most people came to Newark and melded into the big cities. They weren't pioneering rugged individuals. Certainly I flew into Newark and was never rugged in that way. I accepted the corporate check and was delighted to be non-rugged, but there you go. Anyway, as long as it lasted. But I think this paradigm, really, of using this selfish gene is very relevant. I think it, basically we know it as divide and conquer. And I think, but I do believe in saying no to authority. I do believe in, that's why I believe in democracy. When back in 4,000 years ago, basically there was no civilization. People roved about in bands and so on, but 4,000 years ago, when the first civilizations formed in the upper Nile Valley, and King Narmer unified the north and south of Egypt, and that became, the first total civilization. Now, when you have a civilization, you must have some form of collectivism. You can't just be all rugged individuals, otherwise we run around and kill each other, So there must be rules to this, but it must be democratic rules where each individual has a say. So that's why I've promoted what I call democratic capitalism, where each, as we have in England with the John Lewis Group, each individual has a say, can have a say in management. So, that's my ideal of where we must head. But we're going further and further away from that, as you mentioned, with cartels who are running and stealing everything from the world. Anyway, that's my 2 pence.
Okay, who's next? We got a next? We're running out of next? That's it? No one else? Well, I'll finish it up then. First of all, I think I gotta give our speaker a great hand for doing a terrific job tonight. Makes us think about what we should do and shouldn't do, and where we need to go and how we got there and where we've been, and it's quite a thing to think about. As far as our conceptual thing on group or individual, which is what you're talking about, I think, between the staff and the circle, democracy is a wonderful thing, provided it doesn't go too far. Too much democracy is bad. Also, control of democracy is bad. And I think in our country, we have reached a point where we have money controlling the democracy. That's not a good thing. Maybe this is my personal view, but I think that we reached a point where we have the best Congress money can buy. And that's one of our problems. That's our biggest problem. And as a result, we can't get anything done. The congressmen, they're not voting for what we want. They're voting for their next donation. And they're voting for who's buying their time and everything else, and that's what's part of our problem. So I think that has to change. My own view, and for what needs to be done, I think that maybe we get Congress to act in its own self-interest to instruct the Federal Communications Commission to require the media to provide sufficient free airtime. The airways are free for federal candidates to air their views in general elections. That would change everything. Then the congressman represent the district instead of representing the people who are buying their vote in Washington. That might help. And besides that, we have corporations leaving town, going overseas, where labor costs are cheaper. That's been going on for years. That's part of why we've lost we've lost so many jobs. One way to get that back is to start leveling the playing field on costs overseas. You got cheaper labor costs somewhere else. You don't have them here, so maybe we can put tariffs on corporations instead of putting them on countries. Then they'd end up putting jobs here instead of somewhere else, and you'd have jobs in both places instead of just going where labor costs are cheaper. That would make it better. Then you could do something else, something that hasn't happened since the Industrial Revolution. Since the Industrial Revolution, machines replace people. Machines don't pay taxes. That's been our problem. And today we have 25 million people out of work due to the fact that I was in the railroad industry, and we had got rid of the caboose. They put everybody in the engine. So we got too many people. They got rid of the people. Now we got 2 people on a train. That's it. So they don't want carloads anymore. They want train loads. So because they can't handle it, they can't switch the cars anymore. There's not people on the ground to do it. So we end up 5 people on pension for everyone that's working now. We used to have 5 people working for everyone that's on pension. So they went after the Railroad Retirement Board, and they ended up with now the corporation is paying 2.5 times what the employee pays for pension costs. That's under railroad retirement. That is not under Social Security. And that's one of the problems we have in this country is we've got this constant thing going on. So we need to shorten the workday. You know how the 8-hour day started? It was to be a 10-hour day, and they went to 8 hours, and they didn't cut the pay. They got the same money in 8 hours they used to make in 10, and they did that in 1938. That was the Fair Labor Standards Act. It was a federal law, not a state law. It only affected interstate commerce. And when that happened, then throughout the country, big corporations had options. They could break up, de-emerge from smaller companies, get around the restrictive labor law, or spend money, become more productive, and produce more in less time than competition small business did in more time. Within 5 years, big business and labor went to each state legislature to put the states on a shorter workday because misery loved company would eliminate their competition. That's how we got the 8-hour day. That's how we can get a 6-hour day. And that's what the future holds if we look at it and we analyze it. But it's not going to happen as long as Congress is owned by the corporations. And that's my view. Thank you. Now our speaker gets a comment and close the meeting.
Well, I believe John brought up a very important point, and that point really is that we all have a voice. Many times, especially in this country, we don't have a voice. Working with the Dallas City Council, it's very interesting. You really don't have a voice, and even the voices they do hear, they're trying to cut down on how often you can present to them, how long you can present to them. So it's a slippery slide. The thing that and all the disrespect that's shown to the speakers, they're not really listening. And see, I believe that it's kind of like someone was sharing with me recently, and this has happened to me too. You have something that just absolutely fundamental information, so important, some major issue, and you got the goods right there, you got the factual thing, you want to put the DVD on and have your friends watch or something, and you turn around, everybody's dozing off. The popcorn's there, they're not even hitting the popcorn. And well, what's happening? It's so much not resonating with what they're attuned with the social narrative that they're listening to, that they naturally tune it out. It's almost like they can't hear it. And there is a mass awakening happening in this country. It's not as quick as I'd like it to happen, but it is happening, and it's actually happening somewhat with the younger generation. And one of the reasons I am so adamant about Staff and Circle is the younger generation coming up, they're looking like Adam Kokesh. I don't know, did anyone hear where you had the Kokesh talk? He gave an absolutely rousing speech over at the Freeman Bar and Grill. Then when we went over to IHOP, he's talking about anarchy and everything, and then we're all going to get together, all us free individuals, and then we're going to start deciding who gets the property and so forth. I'm like, who's going to be the authority? Who's going to hold the hammer to make that happen? You see, the whole process of how things are done, there's some logic to it. We got here in this country a government that was the most anti-government that the world had ever seen, really. It was a limited government. It was supposed to be a limited government. But folks, it slipped the noose. It's out. It's on the loose. Chris Ann Hall came to town. Chris Ann Hall is a constitutional teacher. She did military service. She was injured in military and took disability. She got her law degree. She became the assistant Florida State Attorney of Florida, the lead assistant prosecutor for Florida. And now she's out around the country preaching the Constitution and talking about constitutional law and the history of the Constitution and so forth. And she and her family are doing what they can. They're using their voice, and they're trying to make a difference. James Madison said, and this is with regard to see, we have this beast called government. We send employees up there, but see, they're slipping around all of the safeguards that were put in. And they're interpreting like the Commerce Clause or the General Welfare Clause or things like this. They're expanding all those things. We only gave them 4 duties. They don't even do those well. And then they're into all these other areas. So you get this creeping cooperative federalism, where they have all the states involved and the states are all getting benefits and so forth like this. But this is a quote from Madison in a case that came up, I believe, in 1792. If Congress can employ money indefinitely to the general welfare and are the sole and supreme judges of the general welfare, they may take the care of religion into their own hands. They may appoint teachers in every state, county, and parish and pay them out of their public treasury. They may take into their own hands the education of the children, establishing in the like manner schools throughout the Union. They may assume the provision for the poor. They may undertake the regulation of all roads other than post roads. In short, everything from the highest object of state legislation down to the most minute object of police would be thrown under the power of Congress. In other words, the federal government. For every object I have mentioned would admit of the application of money and might be called, if Congress pleased, provisions for the general welfare. So this was Madison's attitude. He was basically, if you heard what he said there, he's speaking against all these things being done, but that's exactly what we have now. We have the federal roads, we have the federal schooling, and it's really working out well for us. If the courts have failed to follow the direction of the drafters of this contract, the Constitution, they have failed to follow the fundamental principles of law, and their decisions are void of authority. If their decisions are void of authority, I feel I can say no. I may say no, and there may be consequences, depending on the area. But we are at a time when we really need to think in terms of a mass movement. We had the folks going after the 1%. We had the Tea Party show up. A lot of the actual understanding of these people might be misdirected, but one thing they got right: we're at a time when we do need mass movements to make a change, and therefore I'm preaching staff and circle, because when you go for the solution, you don't want to enact a collectivist solution. We had 2 revolutions within years of each other. We had the American Revolution, which secured liberty and prosperity. I mean, it's not like it didn't have upheavals, but it secured liberty and prosperity for a lot of people for a lot of time. And we had the French Revolution. French Revolution was an ongoing nightmare for many years, and then they got a dictator in, and several dictators. That really worked out well for them. I look at that and I see staff and circle. I see every right in the Bill of Rights can only be secured to an individual. There's not a right I know of that can really be secured collectively, if you really analyze it. So that's the thing, is collectivism to me is somewhat of an illusion. It's like a fig leaf over the fact that we're actually not operating out of that higher mind in the right brain, where we have direct intuition and we can communicate directly with each other and we can be on the same page. We're not. We're individual human beings. As individual human beings, we have a right to be what we are, and either consent or just say, I would prefer not to. The hallmark of a free society is that anyone can, at any point with regard to just about any matter, say, I would prefer not to, as long as it doesn't harm another human being. In a less free society, you start finding this element of what I call compelled performance, where you will do this, you will carry this out. And it could be just very subtle pressure through consensus. It could be, this is what everyone's saying and you just need to, wear these clothes, or, you need to use the new light bulbs. You can't use those old tungsten things, So But you get more and more compelled performance. All of a sudden, you're living in a tyranny. And we've come from a time when we didn't appreciate the liberty we had. We're moving into tyranny, and I'm saying, let's look at some fundamentals here. Thank you. And I don't know if I responded to Hank's comments or not. I agreed with a lot of what Hank said, so it's kind of like, okay, what did I disagree with? I'm trying to pull that one element out, and I can't recall it right now, so thank you, Hank.
Okay, we have to be out of here by 9, and our speaker is invited down to, we usually go down to Starbucks, so you're all welcome down there. And we want to converse with the speaker. He'll be down there, I think. Won't you, Mr. Speaker? Yeah, he'll be down there. And by the way, he has tapes he sells if you want any of those. So he has them too. It's how I mentioned it. And anyway, meeting is adjourned. So take care. See you next week.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices of all our videos. We love it even when you call. So when visiting the Barbeck's restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to the next College of Complex class.